Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I'm Trisna Ariyanti and welcome back to my video. Today, I'm going to talk about monolingual curriculum frameworks, multilingual literacy development, ESL teachers' belief. Teachers, as a collective, hold a body of expert knowledge about what constitutes effective pedagogy based on their personal professional knowledge and experience. Schulman in 1986 stated that the significance of teacher expertise to develop a knowledge base that better supports teachers and teaching has long been recognized within general teachers' education. Such an orientation values practitioner experience and views teaching as a knowledge-producing work. It is similar with language education context, especially in second language teaching. Trend since the middle of 1990 has been away from transfer model of teachers' education towards an increasingly sociocultural view of learning. Significant contributions from this expanded focus on teacher practice and knowledge include the greater awareness of the use of the first language within second language context and the impact of teachers on linguistic and cultural identity upon teaching and professional learning. For the first time in well over a decade, Australian Curriculum Initiative presents a platform for thinking about literacy to success the literacy for all since the late of 1990. The notion of literacy, already apparent in draft of the still nascent curriculum, is one noticeably more expansive than the underpinning literacy for all, with a renewed focus on synergy between literacy, language, and literature, and a greater awareness of speaking and listening in contrast to the almost exclusive former focus on writing, especially reading. There is very little acknowledgement of what is possibly distinctive about being user of another language when developing English language literacy within this context, or what, by extension, may be significant for how teachers then engage with those students to develop their emergent English literacy skill. The first phase of this study sought to understand what teachers considered important when teaching English literacy to students from another language background, with focus on three individual teachers' case studies. That phase identified three key themes around the notion of language for literacy, literacy for learning, and language as literacy. Teachers, understanding not only the language of text, but they need also to develop an enabling language that allows students to initially engage and begin talking about text in the first instance. The teachers explained that their primary focus was less on the text itself than on developing and understanding how language, across all of its different dimensions, can be used as a holistic, complex system to begin working effectively with text. The second theme to emerge from the case study data was that of literacy for learning. For these teachers, the focus of thought literacy is not only about language and social use, but the language also needs to be a learner within such context. The final theme, language as literacy, concerns language to support, articulate, and convey abstract and higher order thought. That is, the language that facilitates the link between thinking and speech. This theme is significant because it illustrates not only an understanding of literacy as being concerned with language for communicative purpose, but also the language necessary to engage with academically and intellectually demanding tasks expected of students within a middle years curriculum, such as comparing, categorizing, inferring, and ordering. Language for literacy. Literacy development in ESL involves a focus on all four macro skills, include speaking and listening as much as in writing and reading. The main purpose of text within an ESL class should be to carry out other tasks rather than a focus on how the language is used within those texts, which should be secondary. A student's ability to interact with text at higher level of personal engagement is influenced by their level of speaking and listening in English. Students from low literacy background in their first language find it difficult to trust the authority of message within written text. This first statement concerns the theme of language for literacy, or the idea of literacy teaching as having a focus beyond the skills sometimes associated with literacy when narrowly understood as working with language in print such as phonetic encoding or decoding of text. For example, teaching reading. Literacy for learning. Students with well-developed literacy background in their first language find the transition into the mainstream straightforward. This literacy in ESL context includes developing a knowledge of the type of teaching and learning practice expected in the mainstream. The focus of ESL is print-based text rather than multimodal text. A student's ability to read and write well by themselves corresponds with an ability to use print-based research effectively in collaborative classroom learning tasks. Theme of literacy for learning view literacy teaching as being as much about developing student knowledge of classroom language practice as on language within society more broadly. It was not simply the ability to read and write that provided the basis for effective classroom engagement, but a further understanding of how those skills are employed in classroom contexts for teaching and learning activities. Language as literacy. Literacy is the ability to use words to explain the concept. Students should not be allowed to use the first dictionary to check the meaning of the concept during the course of lesson. Developing an ability to think in English is critical for ESL literacy development. Language related to the higher order thinking is not the major focus of literacy for ESL. The third theme, language as literacy, was characterized by what teacher describes as a need to develop language that supports skill in thinking. Literacy for learning skills related to the social and cultural practice of the mainstream classroom. Language as literacy was concerned with focus on language for academic and intellectual process common in mainstream learning environment. In conclusion, this study aimed to explore teachers' understanding of teaching literacy when students already come to the teaching or learning relationship with the first language other than English. It was evident that there are distinctive points of difference on how teachers thought about teaching literacy when working with ESL students. From the result, it was clear that there is a strong consensus amongst teachers about what is important when developing literacy with students who bring to the teaching or learning relationship a first language other than English. Many of the elements within the three themes that emerged from the initial case study analysis of teachers' practice focus on language for literacy, literacy for learning, and language as literacy. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.